Her second great-grandmother had been here for 10 years, yet spoke no English. Oh, my gosh. 1930 census says Tommy's 3 times great-grandmother had been here for 41 years and still spoke German. She didn't speak English either. She doesn't even know her own history. She certainly doesn't know this country's history.
Well, there is a woman over the weekend who took it upon herself to research my family history in hopes of digging up some kind of a gotcha moment, a gotcha angle to validate illegal immigration and open borders. And what she found was really shocking, guys. She found that my family who came here in the 1800s from Norway and Germany, that they spoke Norwegian and German. Okay. And really what she did is prove that my family came here.
Sunny Hostin recently found herself on the receiving end of a sharply delivered critique from Tomi Lahren in a segment that quickly gained attention. What initially seemed like a typical political exchange soon escalated into a compelling and, at times, intense conversation where both personalities showcased their distinct styles. Tomi, known for her direct communication, presented her viewpoints with clarity and confidence, while Sunny appeared slightly unsettled by the direction the discussion took. This wasn't just another debate. It became a layered exchange filled with pointed observations and powerful rebuttals. For viewers, it offered a moment of real tension and discourse rarely seen in such segments. Whether you agreed with either side, the debate was undeniably charged, structured, and worth paying attention to.
What she was hoping to do was try to call me a hypocrite for believing in merit-based immigration. Again, she failed miserably. But this really isn't what she calls resistance genealogy. It's just another indication of Trump derangement syndrome. But I really am happy, though, that she has such a fascination with my family history, and I'm hoping that she will take on Elizabeth Warren's next.
Wow, that would be very interesting.
In a recent televised discussion, Sunny Hostin, who often positions herself as a voice of reasoned intellect, was met with firm and unfiltered counterarguments from political commentator Tomi Lahren. Tomi, who has built her brand on bold commentary and sharp critiques, challenged Sunny's statements with assertive precision. What followed wasn't simply a clash of ideas, but a moment where Sunny's arguments appeared to falter under the weight of focused questioning. Rather than a smooth exchange of perspectives, the moment turned into a high-stakes intellectual face-off. Sunny, despite her usual composure, seemed overwhelmed by the pace and substance of the debate. This encounter showed how important it is to support commentary with concrete reasoning, especially when engaging with someone equally prepared to push back.
Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from...
Sunny Hostin is known for being vocal and expressive, often preparing her talking points well in advance when she anticipates a controversial discussion. Her approach tends to lean toward passionately crafted narratives that resonate with certain audiences, particularly when she speaks from personal or cultural experience. However, this style can occasionally come across as rehearsed or overly stylized, especially when others are looking for a more spontaneous and balanced dialogue. In moments where the tone shifts from genuine concern to theatrical delivery, some viewers may find themselves more focused on the performance than the point being made. While Sunny's perspective is important, her delivery sometimes invites criticism from those who feel her emphasis on identity and symbolism can overshadow the core argument.
Provide them with DNA, 23andMe, because I cannot believe the detail on your background that they were able to get.
Well, I don't have to. She did all the research for me, so I'm sure my family is very appreciative.
What about Joy saying, though, what are your skills? It's beyond research. It is personal. It is mean.
Well, of course, this is classical Joy Behar, but I would like to ask Joy Behar what her skills are, because perhaps we could swap stories. I know I watch Joy, and she seems like a highly skilled lady, but for her to attack me, that's really interesting. Those in glass houses should not throw stones.
The recent segment was anything but predictable. While Sunny Hostin and her co-hosts aimed to challenge Tomi Lahren with pointed questions and critical perspectives, the outcome didn't quite go as they may have anticipated. Tomi responded with a composed and strategic approach, addressing issues one by one without losing control of the conversation. Sunny, on the other hand, seemed visibly unprepared for the intensity and clarity of the rebuttals. What began as a back-and-forth dialogue turned into a moment of reflection, where Sunny's usual poise was disrupted by the directness of the critique. The exchange was a powerful reminder that, in public discourse, confidence must be accompanied by consistency, and preparation is key when facing equally assertive voices.
You that bothers him so much.
Well, it's not just me, it's anybody who advocates for merit-based immigration or has an issue with open borders. And again, just like you said, they don't seem to understand that we on the right believe in immigration. We understand that we are a nation of immigrants, and I am proud of my heritage. However, I do believe that the immigration crisis of today is apples to oranges from what it was in the 1800s, when immigrants came to this country legally, were documented, worked for themselves, asked for nothing, and built a life and a family. That has nothing to do with the illegal immigration crisis of today that we must deal with. But they don't want to acknowledge that.
Sunny Hostin has earned recognition as one of the more analytical voices on The View, often taking on complex topics with an air of moral certainty. Her method typically involves combining legal knowledge with strong social commentary, creating an image of intellectual authority. However, critics argue that her tone can sometimes sound dismissive or condescending, especially when she speaks to audiences with differing political or cultural viewpoints. In this recent debate, those criticisms resurfaced. As Tomi Lahren questioned the substance of her arguments, it became evident that confidence alone wasn't enough. The exchange served as a reminder that moral conviction, while admirable, must be reinforced by facts and open engagement. Otherwise, it risks being interpreted as elitist or detached from the broader public dialogue.
I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she...
The discussion began when Sunny Hostin attempted to critique conservative viewpoints by portraying them in a broadly negative light, suggesting that anyone not aligned with progressive ideals might lack thoughtful reasoning. While her intentions may have been to challenge ideological rigidity, the delivery came across as overly generalized. Tomi Lahren immediately responded with a well-prepared set of facts and a calm demeanor that stood in stark contrast to the tension building on the other side. As the conversation progressed, it became clear that Sunny's framing left little room for nuance. When presented with specific evidence and counterpoints, her arguments began to show gaps. Tomi's ability to remain composed while steadily deconstructing Sunny's positions highlighted the importance of engaging in dialogue that respects complexity rather than relying on broad assumptions. The moment underscored a deeper truth. Meaningful debate requires not just conviction, but adaptability and openness to scrutiny.
It was a cattle call to come into this nation illegally. And furthermore, this is again the left's attempt at emotional blackmail. And I would just like to state, I don't know if they understand this or not, but if you don't want your family to be broken up when you cross the border illegally, here's an idea. Don't cross the border illegally. Then your family will surely stay together. I don't know why the left can't think of this, but they would rather try to tell us that we hate families, we want to break up families, we're horrible, we're despicable. No, we want to enforce federal immigration.
Let's start with what Sunny Hostin is widely known for: her vocal advocacy for democracy, justice, and free speech. However, critics argue that her stance on these principles can appear selective, especially when she seems to dismiss or marginalize opinions that don't align with her own. The concern raised in this recent segment was that advocating for freedom of expression should include respecting diverse viewpoints, even when they challenge one's personal beliefs. When Tomi Lahren entered the conversation with well-prepared points highlighting inconsistencies in Sunny's public statements, the atmosphere shifted. What followed was a noticeable pause in Sunny's usually firm delivery, as she tried to respond to pointed examples. It was a moment that illustrated how essential it is to match confidence with consistency, because in a world where facts are instantly accessible, viewers expect more than strong opinions. They expect clarity, openness, and the ability to engage with challenges in real time.
Resonated with so many people.
I think, in large part, I represent middle America. So you've got the two coasts, and those individuals seem to kind of just talk to each other. And then you've got all of middle America right there that's dying to have a voice. They don't really feel like they have one. They're not represented, beyond their communities. So I think they watch me and they say, well, she speaks like I do. She thinks like I do. She seems to maybe get it like I do, and I think that's why it's resonated. And also, I do something very different. There's not a whole lot of young conservative women out there, and so I provide that.
Tomi Lahren also took a moment to point out a pattern in Sunny Hostin's approach to debates daily, her tendency to position herself as a spokesperson for various underrepresented communities. While it's important to speak from lived experience and show solidarity, the critique here was about how identity, in some discussions, can be used more as a debating tactic than a point of connection. Sunny often lists her professional background and personal identity early in debates, which can unintentionally come across as a way to assert authority over opposing viewpoints. Tomi's counter was that this framing should not replace evidence-based arguments. It raised a broader question: does invoking identity always support a stronger case, or can it sometimes shut down dialogue? The exchange highlighted the importance of balancing personal perspective with respect for the broader conversation, especially when discussing complex societal issues that affect many different groups of people.
Talking about criminals and immigrants being criminals, and I just want people to understand what the facts are and the stats are, is that undocumented immigrants are much less likely to have committed crimes than American citizens. American citizens commit more crimes than anyone who is undocumented. I also want to make the point that an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal because he or she is undocumented. That is a civil offense. So to call people illegals is, in and of itself, I think, xenophobic and
the dynamic took another turn when Tomi Lahren confronted Sunny on her use of personal experience as a fallback whenever debates became difficult. In many public conversations, Sunny references her identity as a woman of color as a preface to explain her stance or dismiss while personal context is important. The conversation this time revealed the need for more balance, particularly when the topic shifts from personal to policy. Tomi's approach was methodical and persistent, calmly pointing out inconsistencies in Sunny's positions over time. It wasn't a loud confrontation, but rather a detailed unpacking of how selective outrage and inconsistent standards can weaken a message. The moment served as a case study in how emotional delivery, while powerful, must be supported by logical reasoning if it's to withstand serious scrutiny in public discourse.
Democrats really want to die on the hill of bringing back plane loads of criminal, illegal alien gang members.
But you haven't proven that they're criminals.
Please.
That's the problem.
Be my guest.
Honestly, look, I will be the first one to say if there is a criminal, if there's a gang member in this country, someone who has committed any crime, big or small, get him out. Sure, I'll absolutely concede that. We don't need criminals in this country. But if you're talking about somebody who you don't know because you haven't afforded them due process, then you can't just make that claim.
But the fact remains, President Trump is not only securing our border, but he is deporting criminal, illegal aliens. And if Democrats want to stand in the way of that, and they want to tell their constituents, hey, vote for us in the midterms, vote for us in 2028, we'll make sure that the criminal aliens come back.
One of the challenges with public commentary, especially when it leans on strong emotional appeals, is that it eventually gets examined closely. Tomi Lahren's quiet but firm questioning of Sunny Hostin brought this into full view. Over time, Sunny has built a recognizable style, polished speech, assertive tone, and a confident delivery of key points. But when that presentation is paired with contradictions or unsupported claims, the impact can quickly unravel. Viewers begin to notice when an argument feels more like a performance than a meaningful contribution. Tomi didn't need to raise her voice or dominate the space. She simply stayed on message, allowing Sunny's inconsistencies to surface naturally. This kind of debate, calm, clear, and detailed, can often be more persuasive than passionate monologues, especially when viewers are looking for authenticity over theatrical delivery.
I have a question of my own. Do you lock your doors at home? In your residence, do you have a lock on your door? Do you use that lock?
I do, yeah, I do.
You have an alarm?
And why is that? I mean, you lock your door because you want to know who's coming into your home. It's not because you hate the people outside, it's because you love the people inside. Well, that's what needs to be done with the United States of America. That's why we have a border. We have a right to know who's coming into our country.
In this exchange, it became
and
evident
why.
that even seasoned commentators can find themselves unprepared for structured pushback. Sunny Hostin, often regarded as one of the sharper voices on daytime television, appeared overwhelmed by the clarity and simplicity of Tomi's rebuttals. The strength of Tomi's strategy lay in reflection, not attack. She simply presented facts and allowed Sunny's own words and past positions to speak for themselves. As the conversation progressed, Sunny's usual composure gave way to visible discomfort. The moment wasn't about personal defeat, but about how unchecked confidence can sometimes collapse under thoughtful critique. What made this segment compelling was how it avoided the usual TV drama: no yelling, no walk-offs, no escalations, just a calm, methodical breakdown of ideas. In the end, it reminded viewers that credibility in debate comes not from delivery alone, but from the strength and consistency of the argument.
To point out is that there is no correlation between undocumented people and a rise in crime. That's statistically accurate. Immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, are less likely to commit crimes in the United States. So this notion somehow that it's about national security.
There's a familiar cadence in Sunny Hostin's speaking style. She often begins with phrases like "what's important to understand is," and continues with layered statements meant to showcase thoughtful insight. But this time, the audience didn't seem fully convinced. What followed was less of a reasoned argument and more of a winding narrative full of overused buzzwords and emotional appeals. Tomi Lahren didn't interrupt, didn't escalate. She simply let Sunny continue. The strength of that silence became more powerful than any comeback. Without a solid foundation, Sunny's points seemed less persuasive and more performative. It was a rare moment where the usual talk show spectacle took a backseat to subtle, effective critique. Rather than leaning on showmanship, Tomi relied on structure and substance. And in an age where talking over someone has become a debate tactic, this quiet dismantling stood out as especially impactful.
You would believe differently.
But you know what, Alyssa, the woman.
So, but just to understand, are we saying, do we think the vast majority of Americans are racist? That's what I'm trying to, help me understand.
I think that there is a significant portion that are racist, and you can't dismiss my lived experience.
In the final part of their exchange, what stood out most was how the debate didn't need fireworks to become memorable. Sunny Hostin, known for her assertiveness, appeared caught in her own web of contradictions. Tomi Lahren simply stayed steady, thoughtful pauses, an occasional raised eyebrow, and a clear, consistent message. As Sunny continued to defend her stance, the holes in her argument became more visible. Not because Tomi attacked them directly, but because they unfolded naturally. In real time, it became clear that sometimes, the most effective way to respond to grandstanding is not by shouting back, but by holding up a metaphorical mirror. In this case, Tomi didn't need to win the room with volume, she won it with clarity. The takeaway: having a platform doesn't automatically make one's message stronger. And confidence, while valuable, must be rooted in substance. If nothing else, this segment was a masterclass in how calm and coherence can outmatch